If your knees are feeling stiff, tight, and achy, and you want to increase your mobility, don't do the typical static stretches. In this video, I'm going to give you 2 good reasons why and 5 exercises that will not only improve your knee mobility, but also your strength and joint stability. Coach E from Precision Movement here, and if you're one of our 600,000 plus subscribers here on YouTube, then you've probably heard me talk about this topic before. If you're not, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you like moving freely and without pain, and listen up, because what I'm about to present to you is counter to a lot of the popular advice that you'll hear here on YouTube and elsewhere from doctors, other professionals, friends. So this information that I'm going to share with you might help you to avoid injury, and it will definitely help you to get better results in less time. When it comes to improving your knee mobility, I already mentioned that you shouldn't stretch. So that means your heel to butt stretch for the quads, your typical hamstring stretches where you're reaching for your toes, and the infamous couch stretch where you put your foot up on a couch or a ball or a wall and then get into a deep stretch for the front of your thigh. Now, static stretching will improve your range of motion, but it comes along with 2 pitfalls. Number 1, it's going to decrease your muscular strength, what is most important for injury prevention and performance, your rate of force development, that will be decreased as well, and it decreases your muscular control. Now you can dive into the research and find a lot of different studies looking at this, and I found one right here titled "The Time Course Changes in Knee Flexion Range of Motion, Muscle Strength and Rate of Force Development After Static Stretching." And the results showed an increase in range of motion at all time points. Maximum voluntary isometric contraction was decreased immediately after static stretching, but showed a recovery trend for both 10 minutes and 20 minutes after. However, there were significant impairments in rate of force development up to 20 minutes after the intervention. And similarly, there were significant impairments in force steadiness. And this is what the researchers used to measure muscle force control. So if you're an athlete, these are the opposite results of what you want. But even if you're not an athlete, especially the rate of force development, that's your ability to quickly generate force and muscular contractions. If that goes down, then your ability to recover from a little slip, or if you're walking along the sidewalk and you slip off the curb, your ability to contract your muscles to stabilize your joints and recover your balance is so important for preventing an injury due to a fall, like an ankle sprain, or landing on your hip, something like that. So that's why rate of force development is important for athletes and non-athletes alike. The second main reason why I don't recommend static stretching to most people, this is like 95% of people, is because it can be irritating to joints and your passive tissues like your cartilage or your ligaments like your ACL in your knee. What happens when you go into a deep static stretch is that you go beyond the just stretching the muscle, and you can get into stretching and putting force on those passive structures. Now, even if you don't have pain or any injuries, these passive structures might already be damaged, and you might be doing more damage to them by stretching them. I found a powerful study titled "Prevalence of Abnormal Findings in 230 Knees of Asymptomatic Adults Using MRI." Now, the term asymptomatic is key because this means that people don't have any pain that they're reporting, so they don't think there's any issues. The researchers looked at 115 uninjured sedentary adults, and they had all the participants do bilateral knee MRIs. And the results are pretty shocking. The MRI showed abnormalities in the majority, 97% of knees. 30% had meniscal tears, cartilage and bone marrow abnormalities were prevalent. The researchers also found moderate and severe cartilage lesions, moderate and severe bone marrow edema, moderate intensity lesion in tendons, and high-grade tendinitis. They also found a few partial ligamentous ruptures, especially of the ACL. The bottom line here is that most of us, I'm 43, this study, the average age was 44 years old, most of us have some type of physical, structural damage that you could find on an MRI in our knees. So to avoid further damage to these structures, we're going to avoid static stretching and instead do the 5 exercises I'm going to show you now. The first thing we're going to do is loosen up the tissues and improve the quality, like getting a massage for the tissues using active self-myofascial release. I'm going to show 2 techniques that I've shown on here a number of times. First is for the quads and the IT band is ASMR on the foam roller here. You just start with the roller above the knee, put some pressure on there, relax, and then you roll down as you bring your heel to your butt. So here you're already activating the hamstrings and actively stretching the quadriceps while getting this nice massage to decrease any tension in the muscle, improve pliability, and if you have any knots, you can hang out there. To get on the IT band, just roll to the side of your thigh and do the same thing. Heel to butt, start above the knee, heel to butt. Go slow if you feel any hot spots. And you repeat that for about 1 minute on each leg. Next, you go to hamstrings. So for this hamstring, you want to use a massage ball here, and you're going to get a stool or a bench is ideal, something firm. You place the ball under the hamstring, so that's the back of the thigh, somewhere. Put some pressure on there, relax over it, and then straighten the knee, activate the quads fully, get the knee fully straight. And then relax, move the ball a little bit to a different area, and straighten the knee. And that feels good. Same thing, repeat that for a minute on each side, and that way you'll already have stretched the muscles, but actively. So we've got that strength component there as well. We're not just doing a passive static stretch, and we're breaking up any adhesions that might be limiting the pliability of the tissues using the roller and the ball here. With the next exercise, we're going to start to get to what could be the root cause of the tightness and the stiffness around the knees, which is hip flexors and glutes that aren't working well. And why does that happen? Well, if your hip flexor muscles like your iliopsoas isn't functioning well, then another muscle has to come in and pick up the slack. And that muscle could be the rectus femoris muscle, which is one of the quadriceps, and it goes all the way down here. If that muscle is tight, then you know that the hip flexors, it's very likely that they're not working well. So we've got to strengthen them. If the hamstrings get tight, it's because they could be working to make up for the glutes that aren't working well, because the hamstrings can also extend the hip and the glutes extend the hip as well. So if the glutes aren't working well, the hamstrings do more than they should, and then that causes them to tighten up and feel less pliable, less ability to extend, and that can make your knees feel stiff and achy. So with this exercise that I came up with for you, we're going to not only activate the quads and the hamstrings, but also the hip flexors and the glutes to start to get to the root causes of why the knees might be persistently tight and achy. I call this exercise hip flexors and hams, glutes and quads. First thing you can do is use a wall for balance. This is not a balance technique, so you can use a wall to steady yourself. Stand up tall, and you're going to flex the hips, so lift the knee up as high as you can. This activates the hip flexors, and then you're going to bring the heel to the butt and activate the hamstrings. And you're going to contract both of those muscle groups, the hip flexors and the hamstrings, for 5 seconds. Nice strong contraction here. You could even push on the knee, push on the heel to increase the contraction a little bit. Hold that for 5 seconds, and then you go to quads and glutes. Fire the glutes here to extend the hip, and fire the quads to straighten the knee. And you hold that for 5 seconds. So this is glutes and quads, and then you go back to hips and hams. Hip flexors, hamstrings. Activate both muscle groups for 5 seconds, and then go to glutes and quads for 5 seconds. Now, one little tip, if your muscle out here when your knee is up high is working too much, we're trying to work the iliopsoas, not the tensor fascia lata, which is just to the outside. What you can do is when you're up here holding, bring your knee out to the side a little bit and just rotate externally a little bit. And that can help you to bias that exercise and that technique more to the iliopsoas muscle, which is what we want. The third exercise I've got for you today is called the one-leg butt scoot. And I know that's a funny name, and I actually named it that because when I came up with this exercise, my daughter was young and she liked to butt scoot around the floor. This technique is done best with bare feet because then we can integrate the feet with our movements. And you do it sitting on the ground, starting with 1 foot flat, and you can bridge yourself up or lift yourself up with on your arms so that your butt is not on the floor. From here, you just pull yourself forward with this foot and this hamstring. You pull yourself forward, you can crawl your hands forward until your thigh is as close to your calf as possible, the back of your thigh, and then you push yourself back out. The whole while I'm making sure my foot is active, so I've got that active arch. You can search for foot intrinsic muscles on our channel here, or we'll post a link for you, and you just go back and forth. Now I like to do it on one hand and just drive that knee as far forward as I can, keeping the foot flat on the ground, and then I'm actively pushing myself out. Then I can rest for a second, pop up, and then pull myself in, activating the hamstrings, driving that knee forward over the foot to work the ankle dorsiflexion here, and then pushing myself out here. And this is a great technique to start to work the closed chain, hamstrings and quads in this range of motion that is not often worked, which is the knee fully bent. It's like at the bottom of a very, very deep squat. So this technique is a great one to start to get this functional performance in ranges of motion that we don't normally work, and to build that strength and stability at the same time. The fourth exercise I've got for you to increase your knee mobility is the hinged knee extension with the band. This technique is great because it gets you into this lengthened hamstring position, then gets you to get a little more stretch with active quadriceps contraction. For this exercise, you need a band set up, hooked up just around knee height, and something that you can step into. So it could be a strength band like this type, or this one I've just looped together, a resistance band, the type that has the clips. Step out so you have a little bit of stretch, and this is just above the knee joint. From here, my feet are shoulder width apart, in good posture. I'm going to do a hip hinge, like a stiff leg deadlift exercise. And I start with my knees slightly bent. From here, I go down all the way till I get tightness through the hamstrings, so my hamstrings are limiting me. And in this position, I want to think of squeezing my glutes, contracting my glutes. This will help the hamstrings do less. From here, I'm going to contract the quadriceps and straighten the knee fully, hold that for 5 seconds, and then keep the quads on as I allow the knee to bend back to its original position. Now you've got a choice. You can come up. For those who might not have the best low backs, you might want to come up in between reps. But if you can also hang out in that position and perform all 4 reps at once. So you hinge over. I'm in good posture here, slight curve in the lumbar spine. Hamstrings are taut in this position. Squeeze the glutes, squeeze the quadricep, contract the quadricep. Hold that for 5 seconds, keeping the quadricep on, and then keep the quadricep on as you go back to that start position, and then you can either repeat or stand up, reset, and repeat that way. Do 4 repetitions per side, and this is going to help not only, again, lengthen the hamstrings, but gets glute activation and quad activation that can start to get to some of those root causes, and also simultaneously build strength and joint stability. The fifth and final exercise to increase your knee mobility is one of my favorite lower body exercises, the reverse lunge. A couple quick tips when you're doing reverse lunge. Keep yourself upright, nice and tall. Don't slouch down, look at the floor. Look straight ahead. Step back, make sure that the foot stays flat so the heel doesn't pop up and your knee's not caving in or bowing out. Touch the knee just lightly to the ground and then bring yourself back up. Again, step it back, heels flat, getting a stretch through here, and bring myself back up mostly with that foot. Now, I recommend often using a step because a stepper gives you a little more depth on the knee here, and it also gives you a little more stretch on the thigh back here. When you use a stepper, the key is to bring yourself up with the foot that's on the step. Do not pick a step height that's so high, you've got to kind of push yourself up with the back leg. What you want to do instead is put most of the weight up on the front foot and bring yourself up, mostly using that front foot and leg and hip. That way you're going to get the proper movement pattern, develop the strength where you want it, which is in that leg that's driving you up. Such a great exercise that transfers well to sport, any sport where you're running. The reverse lunge helps, and everyday life. Climbing stairs, that's something that most of us do every day, so it's going to help with that too. To summarize the routine, we started off with active self-myofascial release for the quads, IT band, and hamstrings. Do that for 1 minute per leg for the quads and IT band, and 1 minute per leg for the hamstrings. Next, we went to the hip flexors and hamstrings and glutes and quads exercise. Do 1 set of 4 reps, holding each contraction for 5 seconds on each leg. Next, we went to the 1-leg butt scoot. Do this for 1 set of 4 reps per side. The fourth exercise is the hinged knee extension with the band. Do 1 set of 4 reps, holding each rep for 5 seconds. And we finished off with the reverse lunge. Do 1 set of 6 to 8 reps per side and perform this routine 3 times a week for around 4 weeks for great results. So that is how you're going to increase your knee mobility without static stretching. And you're going to develop your strength and your joint stability at the same time. Let me know what you thought of the video, and I've got a couple of other videos for you. One here that helps you to wake up the VMO, that's one of the quadriceps muscles. One here that helps you to work the iliopsoas muscles better. And finally, if you've got pain in your knees, get this program called the Knee Pain Solution. It's really going to help you out.